So you just take pretty pictures and then post them on Instagram, and that's how you make money as a travel creator, right? Not really. That is one way that you could do it, but I'm excited for today's podcast episode because what's exciting about being a travel creator is that there are so many different ways that you can take a path to monetize and create your content. And so in today's podcast episode, we're going to be uncovering the story of two of my favorite creators. They're a traveling couple who create content together, Danni and Fede of Scratchyourmapa. These guys are awesome. They're super authentic, super real. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Christine Lozada. I'm the host of Everyday Badassery. This is a podcast that in this mini series, we're helping you to be 1% more badass today than you were yesterday as a small business, an entrepreneur, or as a content creator. And this content creator journey is an interesting one. It's one that started during the pandemic and it evolved. It evolved into something that became a monetized opportunity for these two non-stop travelers. And we're going to share very honestly the paths that we have taken to help you uncover the different options that might be available to you, because there is not just one way to do it. But there's one thing I encourage you to look at. It's not just to check out Danni and Fede at Scratchyourmapa. All of their info, their website, their Instagram, and more is linked in the show notes below, but they also have an ebook. Their ebook helps to bring you through, and I actually just went through it last week, 148 pages of how they built their business in various ways for you to learn how to be a content creator, build your true north, understand personal branding, and learn to shoot content and create partnerships and all the things. There are 8 ways, not just 8 ways, there's way more ways to make money as a content creator, and they start to uncover some of that. But in today's podcast episode, let's talk about our origins and our original stories, as well as some tips for you on how to think about it. Let's bring them in.
I'm Danni. So I was born in New York, grew up in New Jersey.
Born and raised in Argentina, and I lived there until I was 25. And when I was 25, I went to work on cruise ships for the first time in my life. I had never seen a cruise ship until the day I started working. And in my first contract, I met Danni.
I love that. And how long have you guys, actually 2 questions. How long have you been traveling? And then how long have you been creating for? I'm so curious.
Oh, okay. So I think on my end, I started traveling really once I was 22. I studied abroad and then I moved to Spain and then, yeah, last year, So, and then basically the past 12 years, I just gave my
Oh yeah, wow.
And we met working and traveling at the same time. So we had really started traveling together from day one. But it wasn't until after we stopped working on cruise ships that we were really doing trips outside of work. And that was in 2019. We did our first really big trip together, which was 6 weeks in South America. That's when we started our Instagram, and then continued on cruise ships, and we're, doing like trips in between contracts. And so we were still traveling a little bit and doing our Instagram. And then 2020 is when we were like, boom, now we're starting to like
take full advantage of this world shutdown and just use the time for something useful.
I'm so excited to unpack this story because that was the same time that I started going hard on content creating. And so as you're listening to today's podcast episode, we're going to kind of bring it back because obviously they were traveling together, which I think is really interesting because you'd already started traveling together. And then you were also previously in an industry where you're making money while traveling, but then shifted into content creation. And there's so many ways. Too often people think there's only one way to make money creating content while you're traveling, but there's a lot of ways. And we're going to explore the different paths we've both taken since the pandemic. But let's actually fast forward and jump forward to now. And I'm curious, like, what are some of the key ways that you guys are monetizing on your content creation today?
So we do a little bit of a hybrid between creating content for our own website and then creating content on Instagram. Those are our 2 big things. And I would say our biggest things right now are affiliates and digital products. So those are the
Yeah.
main two. We also do collaborations with, with tourism boards and different companies. But I would say maybe those are our three biggest pillars.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a similar one. So for me so website was actually a newer thing for me. Like I refused to blog. I refused to
Not
write.
for everyone.
Most
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone. I actually like writing, but the way I write is in all caps with lots of exclamation points. Like I write exactly the way I talk, which does not work well for SEO. And for me, I went after video. So my number one was YouTube. And I thought, kind of how I thought similarly for blog, which came later, I always thought it was just about ad revenue. Like, oh, I'm going to make my money based off of ad revenue.
The ads are really only a part of it. And actually, we took our ads off for a little bit. We're going to be putting ads back on our site, but we took a big break from ads because we noticed that the income comes from so many different places and that some people don't even use ads, which ads are great, but it just goes to show you that there are so many other opportunities.
Most of your time, your attention should be on things that not necessarily give you money right away. And by that, I mean, for example, the user experience is something we started giving a lot of attention the last couple of years, as where 4 years ago, we're just like putting content out there and it's like as much content as you can put out. And it was like, just consume my content. But then I started like, getting more experience to realize, okay, hold on. The user experience, like the way the user interacts with that content is equally, if not more important than the content itself. So we were working with an ad network that, because of their code and because how it's structured, it was really taking a lot of space on our site. It was making it slower. It was making it really hard to read more than 2 paragraphs in a row.
Mm.
And really, like, we were really bringing our user experience down for pennies on the dollar. So we made a decision of prioritizing user experience over little money and just make sure that when we put ads again, like that everything else on the website is going to be great and the ads are just going to be like a little add-on and not the main focus. Because again, if you focus only on the things that make money, you might make a little bit, but you have a very low cap. Like your ceiling is very low.
So I already know it. If you're brand new and getting started, you're probably listening to Fede and being like, "Oh my gosh, like this is a lot." But there are two things I really want you to pull away from this. One is one of the top misperceptions is that one of the best ways to make money as a content creator, whether you're creating for YouTube or you're creating for blog, which we both do, is ad revenue. Ad revenue is where it's at. But you're hearing another story here, which is twofold. One, it's pennies on the dollar, and that is absolutely true. In both instances, you need a lot of views or a lot of view time or page time to be able to get those pennies on the dollar to add up to anything that's worthwhile. And the second thing is this is long game. And so what you're hearing from them is and I feel the same way. For me, it's all about a great user experience and trust with the user. And part of that is making choices that might be about turning off your ads. There's also partnerships. And so there are other ways to monetize your content, whether that is, she was talking about digital products, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, because there's a digital product I want you to know about. And a digital product that I've created, for example, are my travel guides. I have paid travel guides, or I do courses, whether they're courses around how to fly a drone or how to film with a GoPro underwater. Those are different courses that I have on my site. And then collaborations. So she alluded to some of the partnerships that she has, which we'll dive into as well as we talk about our journey, because some of those partnerships are great and some of them you'll never do again.
Oh yeah.
Which we will get there.
Oh my God. And it's a roller coaster because, 1 month you're like, yeah, we're killing it. We got this. And then the next month you're like, oh my God, why are we doing this? But then, it always comes back. You're like, you know what? If it's something you love, then at the end of the day, you just need to keep chugging through because
Yeah.
you're going to be helping someone.
Yes, that's so true. And having your true north is a must, and who you're talking to, which a lot of these things we're talking about is in a digital product that I've already talked about in the intro of this video. So don't forget that's in the show notes. But actually, Danny, tell me what you guys have created. I want to hear it from you.
All right. So we wanted to create the ultimate guide for people to really do what we do. And so, if we have it for couples, but we also have it for anyone who wants to be a creator, who wants to really up their photography, who want to dive into creating their brand, whether it be creating content or building a blog, and how to travel and save money and make it a real lifestyle. It's not just, hey, this is how you get partnerships. It's no, this is how you're going to start your journey. This is how you're going to build your journey and how you're going to sustain it in the long term. So it's content creation from 0 to 100.
And now that's very important about the book, so that people don't feel overwhelmed. It's not that to build your brand, you need to make content and be a photographer. Like, you don't have to do all these things. So we structure it in a way where you can read each chapter separately, and each chapter has its own homework, and it's all step by step. And like, one is going to help you understanding the philosophy behind your brand, right? Understanding really your why, because there's a million tools you can use, and there's a lot of knowledge out there, and like, you just have to go through the path. But it's always important to have a very clear idea of what's your north, because that's going to determine whether you make it or you don't. Because if you don't know where you're going, there's a high chance you don't get anywhere. That's on one side. And when it comes to, I know there's a lot of people that struggle maybe with, okay, I have this idea, I have my personal brand, but I don't know if I'm going to attract the right niche, and I don't know. And something we learned throughout a lot of experience and studying successful people, there's a marketer called Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, who said, "You are the niche." To give an example with Christine here, you're an expert in drones. You're also helping people become more badass. You're also a traveler. Does that mean that you need to choose one of those two? No. The people that follow you will follow you because you're a badass that flies drones, that travels. So as long as you stay true to your values, then you will attract the people that like your content for the way you're making it. Because otherwise you're just creating a persona that is not you, and there's a very high chance you end up burning out or just hating the person you're becoming.
Yeah, it's true. Knowing, you don't have to know exactly what it is you're going to like create or do, but having that, like that idea. And I actually I went through that portion of the workbook and filled it out. So I encourage you to do the same, but having an idea of what that looks like will help you to hone in on what it is you're creating. And it will make it easier, as I've found over time, on what projects you say yes or no to and what makes sense and on where to monetize. And so kind of bringing that back. So we've talked about their kind of three main ways that they are monetizing today. And I would say, in full transparency, in the journey that I've taken since 2020, kind of the key ways that I'm monetizing today are, it's not ad revenue, I'll tell you that, although ads are on for my other YouTube channels. It's through some of the partnerships that I've been working on, whether that's I work with someone who books my audience onto the same trips that I do. I partner with a travel agent. It's enough volume that even though I'm a travel agent, I only book friends and family. So that's one. The second one for me is other partnerships, whether with tourism boards or PR firms, or things like sponsorships. What sponsors make sense for this? Because my third one is affiliate revenue. And that's a big one for me as well, because, oh, Christine, I saw you stay at that hotel. Like, I want to stay at that hotel too. It's like, great, use this link, and I will get a cut of that, or this tour guide, or fill in the blank. But that didn't happen from day one. So let's bring it way back. Would love to hear. Yeah, you guys can choose who's going to bring us back. I'm curious, like, so we know that you guys started traveling together during the pandemic. You started your Instagram account, but like, when did you know like it was time to start trying to make money off of your travels?
COVID. The thing is, I think a lot of people during that time, 2020 hit, and it was like the unknown, right? So people started freaking out, and they're like, what am I going to do? And we were FaceTiming each other because I was stuck on a cruise ship and Fede was stuck back in Argentina. And we were like, whoa, this is the time. We now are getting pushed. We don't know when we're going to see each other. Like, let's make this happen, because while the rest of the world, I mean, I hate to say it, a lot of people are sitting back and they're just saying, "Oh, I can't wait for this to end. I can't wait for this to end." We're like, "No, no, no. This is the time. This is the
Mm.
universe saying, you need to do this. You need to make your dreams happen." Like, because you don't know what's going to happen from the outside. So you need to,
Yeah, but I'm curious, like, what your first steps were. So I'll give you an example of mine. I was the same, where, like, when the pandemic hit, I was like, I could choose to stay in my corporate job, or I could choose to travel to places in the world that I felt were allowed me to be outside, allowed me to feel safe traveling during the pandemic. And so I spent all my time on beaches. And I knew my true north in whatever it was I was going to create was simply at the end of the day to help someone to travel smarter so that they would take the damn trip. That was my goal. Like, travel smarter. Like, what are the super helpful researched travel tips from my experience, both researching and experiencing it, that I can share with someone? And it's so easy and inspirational and helpful. It makes them take the trip. And it was when I landed in Tulum, Mexico, where I was just going to spend time on the beach by myself, that I realized that I was totally catfished by all of the Instagram photos, because the experience I was having there was not what I had signed up for. And I wanted to help people to be smart travelers, tell the truth about what it was, fill in the blank. And during that time, I made a series of YouTube videos that ended up performing extremely well. And I, at that time, was like, ad revenue. Like, I'm going to just make YouTube videos and go after ad revenue. And then I was like looking at what everyone else was creating so I could try to make the same things that were going, large or viral. And that was kind of like where I started. I knew what I wanted to create. I knew that there was something there with YouTube and ad revenue, but that was kind of like my first startings. What about you guys
so
for?
for us, I mean, I've always been very into writing. And it was like, when I was living in Spain, I mean, we're talking 12 years ago, people were like, "What? You're traveling all the time. Why didn't you start a blog? You love writing. Why didn't you start a blog?" And it was
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, one day, one day. And like,
Mm.
you can't just say one day. It won't happen. You
It
just
won't
you
happen.
just need to do it. So
Yeah.
when it was COVID, we were like, listen, we already did this amazing 6-week trip through South America. Him and I know all of these secrets to how you can travel for cheap, and you can also work and travel. So we're like, we need to build resources to help other people do the same. And we're like, what
Mm.
better time than when we're like sitting here twiddling our thumbs, because when I was on the ship, now I'm not working and I'm on the ship. So I'm like, let's start writing guides. So
Ah.
we just started making a list. We were like, what are all the places we've been? What are all of our travel tips, our packing tips, our flight hacks? And we started like just making a huge outline of what we could write about. And when I tell you, I spent every day, the two of us, we spent all day, every day. I'm like, I'm going to write this guide. You write this guide. And when I tell you, I, between the two of us, we were writing probably 4 guides a day. Did those guides look like they look today? No. And
Mm.
which is good. You want to keep growing and you want to keep learning. And it is a journey. So, if I told you how many times though each of those guides have gone through a makeover, it's like,
Mm.
each one was written maybe 5 times at this point, because it was
Yeah.
like I started in a certain way of how we were doing our guides, and then I said, you know what? No, I want to add this. It's missing this. Then boom, like a year later, it was like, no, things need to be updated. And you know what? I want to start doing our pictures like this. So you keep
Mm.
going through, and I mean, you just keep learning. So
I think this is such an important point because there's an evolution. Too many people don't start in the first place because they don't know how they're going to monetize yet, and they don't know exactly how it needs to look. And it's like, okay, cool. You guys wrote a lot of guides, but
yeah,
even those went through a million iterations.
absolutely.
If you go back on my YouTube channel and you watch my YouTube videos, are not editable. I can like trim out things, or
Yeah,
I can like mute something, but I can't edit a video once it's been posted unless I take it down and repost it in some new edited way. You can go back and you can just cringe at all my original videos. Like, I've come a very, well, in theory, I've come a long ways, but it's all part of the journey. You just got to
absolutely. You have to just take
start.
action, because the thing is, some people wait until they have got everything perfect and then they think that's when they need to start. No, you need to just
Yeah.
start. Start writing, start recording, start posting, even if it's not great. The beauty of it is that you will just keep getting better.
You have to practice. Practice makes progress. That's also in your ebook. Don't forget, that's linked in the show notes below. But I talked to Mr. Beast about exactly that when I went to Vid Summit, one of the YouTube conferences. And so we're going to talk about the progression of where we went as we learn to monetize. But learning along the way is so key in your journey, because how else are you supposed to know? I mean, trial and error is great, but also success leaves clues. And why not learn from the best?
And everyone succeeds in a different way, because, you have people out there who are gurus, right? And they're like, oh, this is the way. But guess what? Maybe two people are awesome at something and they do them completely differently. And that's
Yeah,
okay.
always surprised at how many ways there are to monetize.
Yeah.
Even for me on my journey. So like the next things that happened were people started copying my travel. And I was like, oh, I should be making affiliate revenue, right? Which is how I got turned on to places like Travel Payouts, for booking, for people who copied my hotel or my tours, etc. And then I started learning that people also wanted to know, like, what did you need? Danny talked about pack lists. And that led me to be like, oh, I should create these helpful pack lists and these helpful Amazon storefronts where people can see curated products and write about these products and get affiliate revenue and commission through Amazon for things like that. And then that, like, as I'm taking this journey, like, I'm feeling my way through this, right? And I'm starting to learn that there are more ways to monetize beyond just the ad revenue. And then as I started bringing it and learning, right? Bringing in more tools into my toolbox, I was like, oh, a drone is definitely going into my toolbox. And then I realized, right, I should be creating courses around these drones, because a lot of people don't know how to fly them and think they're complicated, and they're not. And so this was like the next step in my evolution and journey, while simultaneously building a social presence and starting to get found by places that wanted to work with me, and simultaneously getting curious about reaching out to different PR firms or tourism boards and asking if we can collaborate and work together, which we'll talk about more in a second. Hey, I want to interrupt today's podcast, because if you're listening to this message and you're thinking, wait a minute, I have an audience, or I have a following, or I have a readership or a viewership, and they copy my travel too, then you might want to check out today's sponsor, which is Travel Payouts. What's amazing about this platform is it's super quick to sign up, and there's over 100 travel brands that participate, aggregated all together in this platform. You just opt into the different programs, and then you can create affiliate links that at no cost to your follower, your reader, your viewer, at no cost to them, they can copy your travel, whether copying your hotel, copying your tour, copying your fill in the blank. There's over 100 travel brands that you can create these affiliate links for. And I use them all the time in my own content. And it's an amazing way for me to scale my own business. It only takes a minute to sign up. And so Travel Payouts is today's sponsor, and consider checking out the show notes. There's an additional offer and throwback for you if you want to sign up for that using the special promo code. All right, let's get back to the episode. But bring us into the next part of your evolution. So you guys were writing guides, and then what was next?
Our big thing for us was when we went to Mexico. Once I finally got off the ship, it was 4 months. Fede was in Argentina, and we were like, all right, how are we going to get together? We had been separated for 8 months, and we noticed that Mexico was open. We were like, all right, here we go. We're going to Mexico. So we spent 2 months in Mexico, and we were like full blown new content strategy, where we're just like, we kind of really developed our style when we were in Mexico. It was a lot of colors and, showing authentic experiences and showing different places that people didn't know about or go to. And we were like, you know what? We want to show hidden gems. Like, we don't want to show the same places over and over. We want to show something unique. So we're like, all right, when we were in Mexico, we really learned how to start taking better pictures. We learned more about what our message was to everyone, what we wanted to share. And we also learned even more how to travel with restrictions. right?
Mm,
Because of COVID, we were like, all right, now
yeah.
we can really start giving people tips about what to do when they're in a rut with so many different types of situations. So that's when we really started to grow our Instagram.
Mm,
Um, and that trip was kind of the foundation of our content, I would say. We started to get
yeah.
seen, and people started to know who we are, what we did, why we were different. And then from there, we continued our trips with that foundation.
A lot of people ask me, they're like, how did you grow your Instagram account? And like, how do you make money off of Instagram? I'm curious, like, what your answer would be, but I'll go first. So I would say in the beginning, in the very beginning, a couple ways in which I grew my Instagram account the fastest was one, being super consistent. I consistently posted a lot. And it was on that, during that time, it was twice a day. I posted twice a
Us
day
too.
for like a year. And then because I have a Walmart, Amazon background, I honed in on the analytics. I was constantly looking at what's working, doing more of that. I was engaging a lot on the platform. And then the last one is I was really strategic around both hashtag strategy at that time, as well as who I would either partner with or potentially give free content to. So an example would be there is a tourism board that was highly relevant to my audience and who I wanted their audience. And so I allowed them to repost a bunch of my Instagram photos and I received that audience back. Or, for example, like I do a lot of underwater content. I partnered with a really big scuba diver. We were in a lot of each other's content on trip together, and I gained a lot of his audience, for example. And so those are a couple of the ways I grew. And then the first ways I started monetizing was simply from those eyeballs. A lot of tourism boards started reaching out to me. And also just a lot of brands started reaching out to me. And I started exploring this whole idea of creating a rate card. If you're like, oh my God, what's a rate card? Basically, it's a way in which you can price things out of like, oh, 3 Instagram posts plus 20 stories or one post plus 3 stories, fill in the blank, whatever it is, one reel, one live video, whatever it is, can cost X, Y, or Z. And you can pick from packages. That's what a rate card is. And that's when I started exploring that. So the question is, how did you guys grow your Instagram? Like, what are some of the key ways in the beginning? And then, like, how did you first monetize your Instagram account?
So obviously, we all know that the strategies continue to change. What was relevant in 2020 isn't necessarily 100% relevant in 2024. However, one thing that has not changed is engagement. And
Yeah.
you have to engage with your audience. And not because, not even just because it's an obligation, but because that's part of the fun. I mean,
Yeah.
you build your relationships with your audience and even other creators. And when you,
That's how we became friends.
exactly. I mean, this is how we became friends. And it's so awesome when you're traveling and you meet up with other creators and you help each other. You learn from each other because we're all different.
Hmm.
And you know what? You might have 100 DMs. Answer them. People are going out of their way to message you. You have to remember that behind every like and every comment is a person.
Yeah, it's true.
So you have to nurture your relationships and, you know, always answer people, even if you can't say, hey, I can't get around to this right now, but I will get back to you.
That authenticity is everything. Okay, so I agree. Engagement is everything. I also think about it this way, whether Instagram or any other platform, engagement, and a lot of people are like, oh, what does engagement mean? Think about this. The more time that you can get other people to spend on the platform, that platform will reward you. On YouTube, that's watch time. You get someone to watch a video all the way through, they will send that video out to everybody. If you get more people to respond to you in the DMs on Instagram and share your content and respond to your stories because you're keeping it real and authentic, Instagram will reward you and push your content out. And this is the case for every single platform consistently over time. I mean, they want as much as your time of your time as possible, which makes sense. So engagement was one of the key things. What are the other ways that you grew in the
Consistency,
beginning?
just like you said, we were posting twice a day. We were
Yeah.
just pumping out content. The great thing is that you don't have to spend as much time on the app as you used to. And that's just how the Instagram has changed in a bit because you could do a reel that just hits and you will get a lot of people, you get a lot of eyeballs. Whereas when we first started, you had to spend like 4 hours on like consistently engaging, where engagement is still important, but you need to be consistent, and you also need to create a brand, whether, even if, you don't niche down to something super small, at least people need to know why they're following you. It can't just be
Yeah.
like everything everywhere and random.
Yeah, you can't be everything to everyone because otherwise you are nothing. People know to come to you guys for fantastic, literally magical photos. I love that they're romantic. Like, I go to your Instagram account because I'm like, oh, me and Meatball, we're gonna crush this couple's photo. And I'm like scrolling through your feed and I'm like, damn, that looks good. We totally can't pull that off. All right, let's try. Oh yeah, that didn't work out at all. I love it for that. And the other thing is, like, people know to come to me for travel, drones, and badassery. Those are my three content pillars, and I'm super clear about it. And the other thing, though, is like a lot of people, especially, if you're new to the Instagram platform, are like, oh, it's all random. And it's not necessarily random. And one thing I recommend for everybody is take a strategy call with the meta team. It's free. I did it. They went through my account, they analyzed the whole thing, and we got on a call together and they talked to me about what I should keep doing and what I shouldn't do anymore, and new strategies for 2024. Because, like Danny said, things change really quickly. And the strategy, I mean, back in 2020 is totally different than now, but
Yeah.
even 6 months ago is different than now. I love that. So, okay, fast forward, growing on Instagram. What are the different ways that you started monetizing on Instagram?
On Instagram, mostly partnerships, I would say.
Yeah.
Collab requests were coming in a lot. And in the beginning, you start to do exchanges, right? You're like, oh, you send me this product, I'm going to try it. Then I'll do like some stories about it. But then again, you always want to remember that you're not here to work for free. So you start to take on the collaborations that serve you. Like someone reached out and they were like, oh, we're going to give you free jewelry and this. And I'm like, nah, my audience doesn't care about jewelry. Neither do I.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to take free jewelry. Like, it doesn't serve me or my audience. So we always tried to make sure that we were starting to filter our collaborations to make sure that they were meaningful. And you want to do higher paid collaborations, but do less of them.
Yeah.
So we started with collaborations. Those were the ones that were bringing us in money at first, I would say. That was our first.
Yeah. I love that story. I love the part where you were choosy about which ones. And you have to be careful because, I mean, I'm sure everyone has seen Instagram accounts out there who are just literally selling random things all the time, and it doesn't feel meaningful. I am so careful about what I will say yes and no to. And I'll give an example of a time in which I did a free product trade versus one where I was like, no, you got to pay me for that. One is, I was like, especially in the beginning, like before I went and worked for Walmart and Amazon, I interned at different companies before I worked at the regular place. And when I interned, how much did I make per hour? Zero. It was free work. And I saw the same thing when I became a creator. I didn't have a chip on my shoulder, and I was willing to do some free trades or free work where it made sense. And
because you want to serve your audience. So at the end of the day, if it's going to help people, you're like, all right, if this is like a small family run business and I really like their product and my audience would like their product, then you're like, okay, well, this makes sense.
yeah, exactly. And so this is not a full small family owned product, but it was a scuba diving gear company. And I wanted to show my audience the ocean. And I obviously needed new scuba gear for this month-long scuba trip. And so I partnered with a place where I simply just needed to call out their brand in every single post that I put out. And that was how I was able to save. I didn't want to say not spend, but rather save $7,000 on what I otherwise would have spent on the required scuba
There
gear.
we go.
So that made a ton of sense. If there's a drone company, for example, that has an accessory where I'm like, nah, I don't really use that accessory personally, but my audience might benefit from knowing that this product exists because it might be for them, then I might be like, yes, I will absolutely cover this in a review or post about it or fill in the blank.
Or yeah.
Yep, and then get an affiliate code as well as have a rate card for it. So these are various ways that you can monetize on Instagram. All right, let's fast forward a bit. So you guys have been hearing about the journey that they have taken. And don't forget, all of their info as well as their ebook is in the show notes below for you. But let's fast forward to, and you all know I don't like to just keep it nice and happy with all the growth stories, but also what did you totally F up on along the way? And so I know we only have a few minutes left.
You have enough time?
I know, right? Let's try to choose one story each. I could talk about this for hours. On like a path that you tried taking, whether it was just something you wanted to try or from a monetization standpoint or fill in the blank, that it ended up not being the right path for you. Do you have one, or otherwise I'll go first? One of the things I was so curious about, and I knew from day one that I wanted to be the one that helped my audience. And that's why my YouTube channel, right, isn't some random avatar or a voiceover. It's my face talking to people. And I wanted to be the one that helped people. Over time, as I added a drone to my toolbox, added more nicer cameras and microphones and blah, blah to my arsenal, a lot of people started realizing that I could create quality content. And so they wanted me to shoot video content for their brands. And so for a while, I said yes to, I would say, I don't even want to say it's a dozen, maybe like 10 projects, in different capacities, in which I was only behind the camera and never in front of the camera. And it was solely about Christine, who used to be in marketing for Walmart and Amazon, creating the marketing story for that brand, shooting and editing the content, and delivering a marketing piece to them. And it was insanely lucrative. It was a very great way to add money to my wallet. And I was just like, this in no way serves what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm not helping anyone to travel. I'm not traveling. Oh, sometimes I was traveling during these projects, but it just was so far away. Like, I was using a skill that I learned as a creator to make money in a way that wasn't serving me in what I was trying to do as a creator in the first place. And then I started a hard stop on I only shoot for myself. And one exception, which is for Location Indie, which is a community that I love and I'm a part of. Camp Indie is an event that I go to each year. I made an exception for them, but I otherwise only shoot for myself. Curious about you guys. What's a path that you went down that you were like, not going down that?
I was going to talk about the travel pillowcases because I was very excited. To this day, I use those travel pillows every trip. Every trip. I I stand by the product. I love the product. It was just I don't want to make a ton of content marketing the travel pillow as our main thing. I don't want people to know of us as that's the only thing. And you're only going to mention it so often in your content. And you know, we wanted to keep everything handmade and we wanted to keep it like a sustainable business in that way. But we kind of were like, you know what? Unless we can outsource it to someone else, it's consuming a lot of our time and taking away from something that's a little bit more valuable for.
I know how I want to end today's podcast episode. And don't forget to check the show notes, because there are not just the 8 ways in which you can monetize through being a creator that they talk about in their ebook, but there are a lot more paths. But you can explore those more in that ebook. It's in the show notes for you. But I would love to leave people with like one thing you would want them to take away. Like, as they're getting started, what's one thing that you would want them to know?
Always stay true to yourself and what you love, because all too many times we've seen people who chase trends because they know that they're going to do well, but then you get burnt out because you're not enjoying what you're doing. So you always need to be enjoying what you do and also having a purpose for it. Not just copying people and not just doing what you think is going to get you more exposure.
Yeah, so true. You got to stay true to you. Ah, these are 2 of the realest creators out there. Even it's all in the show notes, but tell us, where can people find you guys?
So we have our Instagram, Scratchyourmapa. We have our website, scratchyourmapa.com. We have Pinterest, Scratchyourmapa. We're Scratchyourmapa across all platforms, but our 2 main are Instagram and our website.
And all of that's in the show notes for you. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me.
Thanks for having us. We always have fun with you.
These guys keep it real and they're super fun. And they're both traveling in two totally different places right now. Make sure you connect with Danni and Fede at Scratchyourmapa. Don't forget about their ebook. It's in the show notes below. I'm Christine Lozada. If you found value in this, please share it with somebody. Leave a positive review. And if you have a question, connect with us. Actually, all of our info's in the show notes. I'm at Christine Lozada. They are at Scratchyourmapa. We got you. We hope to see you in the next adventure. Ciao.